This is Performance Shop, presented by Tuff Stuff Performance Accessory.
Here's another customer's car we built. This thing is rocking a 347 small block. Makes about 400 horsepower. And as you can tell, there's a lot of bling under this hood. We went ahead and painted the block, powder coated the intake manifold, and added a couple of chrome valve covers. It's a perfect candidate for a Tuff Stuff water pump. This one we chose chrome because it'll match the valve covers. They also come in black chrome, stealth black, Cast Plus, which is really nice looking. It's basically an OEM look with a little bit of added bling to it. It looks really nice. But because we have chrome on our valve covers, we went ahead and went with the chrome one. Now you guys have to remember that there are reverse rotational and standard rotational water pumps. All you gotta do is simply look at the serpentine belt and see which way your water pump is rotating and order the correct one for your application, because if you don't, there's a possible chance that you could overheat. Now, these water pumps for the Fords have a backing plate, okay, and it's loose. So if you look at this one, I've already tightened that one. They've got a gasket in between and the backing plate is loose. But you gotta tighten that backing plate before you install it on the car, but you wanna make sure everything's lined up. So I take 2 bolts, put them through the water pump, through the gasket and through the plate. I'll hold it in place like that, and then I'll go ahead and tighten my 2 lower bolts holding on the backing plate. That way I know that when I go to install the water pump, I'm not gonna have any binding with the gasket or the back plate when I put my hardware through, okay? What we have already done is we went ahead and moved away the compressor, protecting the intake manifold. This way I did not have to evacuate and recharge the AC. Just place it out of your way. We went ahead and removed the serpentine belt, and the first thing I did before I removed the serpentine belt was loosen and remove the 4 bolts holding on the pulley for the water pump. That way the serpentine belt holds the pulley tight for you to be able to loosen those 4 bolts. So what we've done is we went ahead and removed it, we cleaned the water pump surface of all the gaskets, we've got everything out of the way, and now we're ready to go back in with our new water pump. And the one thing you guys have to remember is, on a Ford, and some GMs as well, a couple of the water pump bolts go through into the coolant galley. So you have to make sure to put some anti-seize on there so that in the future when you want to do a water pump job, you're not going to have any issues with binding or breaking of bolts, because it happens all the time. So the first thing I'm going to do is reverse procedure, put my 2 hoses in for the heater core. We're going to place our water pump in place, put the 2 top bolts in, holding the water pump in place. That way I can go ahead and apply my blaster anti-seize grease onto my hardware going through into the coolant galleys, and they'll be protected. And the good thing about Tuff Stuff water pumps are, they actually flow 30% more cooling than the factory setup does. 30% is a lot. That's going to give you some really added cooling. They've got thermostats that are lower temperature for your application, which is really nice. And they're made right here in America since 1979. We'll go ahead and put our hoses on, making sure that the orientation of your clamps are in the right direction so that you can always service your hoses without having to remove a bunch of stuff. You want to make them tight, but don't make them too tight, because these radiator clamps will actually bite into the rubber, and over time it'll break the hose, causing a failure. That's the last thing you want. Okay, now we could go back on with our power steering bracket. That way I've got the room to put my lower radiator hose back on, and then we can continue on with the air compressor replacement. All right, now I can go ahead and put on my lower radiator hose, making sure that my clamp is where I can get to it, because it's in a pretty tight spot. There we go. And the cool thing about Tuff Stuff is that these water pumps come with heavy duty bearings, and that will give you longer lasting life, because a lot of times the water pump will fail at the bearing itself will fail, and then it will leak out of the P-hole at the bottom of the water pump, okay? And there is 1 bolt on the bottom of the air compressor that needs to be started with the air compressor. That way you don't have to remove the compressor from the bracket, okay? All right, so now we're at tail end. We'll go ahead and put our belt and pulley back on, and we're gonna be done with the water pump install.